Hello, my name is Evelyn Hankins, and I'm the head curator at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden here in Washington, D.C. It is my real privilege to welcome you to today's conversation with Amoako Boafo, a painter who has rightly garnered a tremendous amount of international attention for his decidedly unique and mesmerizing portraits that celebrate the diversity and complexity of Black diaspora subjects. Before we begin, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Sandra and Howard Hoffman for their generous support of Amoako's work and the Hirshhorn collection. And for a little bit of housekeeping, ASL is provided today via Zoom. Cart captioning is available across all platforms. And additionally, a captioned recording of this program will be made available on our website and our YouTube channel. If you would like to ask Amoako a question after he and I have had our conversation, we welcome you to type it into the Q&A in Zoom. Amoako Boafo is an award-winning painter originally from Accra, Ghana, where he studied at Granada College of Art and Design before earning his MFA from the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, Austria. Over the last several years, Boafo's work has been featured in gallery and museum exhibitions internationally, including his debut solo museum survey, Amoako Boafo, Soul of Black Folks, which was recently on view at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco and the Contemporary Art Museum in Houston. In addition to being awarded the Walter Kozatsky Art Prize and the Strasbourg Art Award, Boafo collaborated with Kim Jones, Dior Men's creative director for Dior's Spring-Summer 2021 men's collection. He was also selected by the Uplift Art Program to create the inaugural suborbital triptych on the exterior panels of a Blue Origin New Shepard rocket, which launched in August 2021. Currently, he is developing an artist residency and collection program, the first of its kind in his hometown of Accra. Amoako, it is such a pleasure to welcome you here today. Would you please turn on your camera to join me? I think you're still muted.
Microphone on.
Hello, welcome. Technology
Hello.
worked. Thank you
Hello,
again.
Evelyn.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
I think the pleasure's all mine, and thanks for your time as well.
Absolutely. So just to give our audiences a sense of where you are, could you please tell us where you are joining us from?
I am joining in from ACCRA, Accra, Ghana.
Which is your hometown?
Yes.
And you
Born
live there?
and bred in Accra.
Born and bred. And you spend most of your time there?
Yes.
Okay. Before we look at your paintings, I would love...
At the moment, yes. I think for the past 3 years.
All right, I think
Yeah,
we're...
go on.
Okay, I thought we had a video blip. Here we go. Let's try again. Okay. Before we look at your paintings, I would really like to have you speak briefly about your background as a means of introduction. You went to art school in Accra, but then you made a decision to move to Vienna for graduate school in 2014. And in reading, what I realized is that that move had a tremendous impact on you, both as a person and on your art practice. And I'd love if you could share a bit of that now to frame your work.
Well, before art happened, I was a tennis player. Yeah. So I did play tennis for a bit of time. I thought I will take it to pro, but then I had a slight shift to go back to school because I had the opportunity to a proper living from tennis. So that's a bit of background before it happened. And then, of course, I did not just move to Austria. If that's possible for, I don't think a lot of people on the continent has that opportunity or that flexibility to just move to places. So, I wasn't one of them. I happened to have met someone from Europe who I got married to, and then that was the transition for me to move from Accra, Ghana, or that gave me the opportunity to move from Accra to Vienna. And when I got there, of course, once I was there, there were a lot of opportunities that were made available as an artist. So I, thought of making good use of it because, it's not easy to get them back home. The way I was taught art in Ghana was a bit different from, what it was in Austria. Hard for me from the beginning because, in Ghana, you have a lot of, they have a lot of control on your practice and what you do and how you do it. Whereby in Austria, it's like, it's just, you have the space and your prof and you just have to do what you can do, and then you have a conversation from there. So there's a lot of freedom in how you create, and that was a struggle from the beginning. But then, once I understood it, it really helped me move from what I knew from Ghana, and then that helped me like really transition to what I am at the moment. So both steps really helped me.
Great. Great. That's really helpful. I would love, if you wouldn't mind, if we could put the slideshow up, please, and we could look at the first work. Great. So just to start then, like, was portraiture something that you were always interested in? And if not, when did you decide, and how did you decide to start focusing almost exclusively on portraiture?
Well, I think human beings are always interesting. So portrait for me was a most interesting subject when I went to art school, because with one's face you can tell all the stories and learn everything that you need to learn from, just by looking and by looking. So portraiture was one of the most interesting things, but aside that, I also likes challenge, and portraiture is one of the painting subjects which is very, very challenging, because to be able to sketch a person to look like the person, and then to mix the colors to get the exact tones and exact expressions and all the small details was very challenging. And when I started, you've been given an assignment to draw maybe someone with the age of 5 or 10 years, and then you will end up painting the person to look like, I don't know, 70 to 80 years. So those were the struggles that I enjoyed from learning portraiture. And then once you enjoy the challenge and you like it and you overcome it, then it becomes part of you. So portraiture has always been an interest.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And I read a quote by you when I was preparing for this talk, in which you said, I paint so I don't have to explain my life. And that quote has really stood with me. Could you elucidate on that quote a little bit?
There are some people that are blessed with words. I'm sure you one of them, and you can really express yourself, and you can you can find yourself with words. For me, I mean, I don't have that all the time. I have my moments where I can express, and sometimes it's not there. But imagery, visuals for me is always there. Colors for me is always one of the things that I can express, and I can. For me, it's there. That's why I that's the reason why I like to put almost everything in my painting, so I don't have to say more. I do more, so I say less. For me, that's painting.
That makes sense. And just to be clear, I couldn't paint my way out of a box or make anything creative out of a box. So we're good there. We'll stay in our lane. We'll stay in our lane, so to speak.
All right.
Yeah. If we could look at the next slide, please. The Hirshhorn was incredibly fortunate to recently have received as a gift Cobalt Blue Dress, a really stellar example of your work. And when we spoke briefly yesterday to prepare for this call, I told you that my jaw literally hit the ground when I saw the work uncrated. It is a magnificent painting. That's all I can say. The scale, the color, the intensity. It's amazing. And so what I'd love to do is to use this painting as a way to ask you to talk a bit about your process. So let's start. Who is this and how do you choose your subjects?
Well, most of the times there are people that I know, and this particular painting happens to be a person that I know here in Accra, a family friend. So part of the things that I look at when I look at image making is of character, because most of the times you find yourself in others and you kind of find yourself looking at someone doing something that you've thought of doing, and it kind of resonates. I look for strong personalities. I look for people who like to show who they are and not just exhibit something else. And then also I look for personality in style in fashion. So that also play a very big role, because I feel like fashion does a lot than people might know. But I'm sure we'll get to fashion. So yeah, that's how I select my subjects.
And is it important to that your viewers know who the subjects are? I mean, because sometimes you've included the names, or it's clear who it is, and sometimes it isn't. So it's more about how you're drawn to them rather than who they are specifically, if I understand this.
For me, it titled them with the name, but in this instance, it did not look like the person. But then I was able to get the feeling that I wanted, the character, the personality that I wanted from the person. So, well, I didn't get a question.
No, you did. No, I think we had a little video gap there, so I think you got it. So let's talk a little bit then. So you have your subject. How do you move forward in the compositional photo in the process? Do you paint from the model? Do you paint from photographs? Do you make preliminary sketches, or do you just? I'm incredibly curious how you move along the way in your process.
I don't think I have one way of making painting. I have moments where I do steady drawings before the painting. I have moments where I do live painting, depending on the time and the space. But of course, most of the times I do paint from photos, which is the easiest, because then you can do it in any space that you find yourself in any time frame that you feel comfortable doing. So photos are always easy. Think of the photo and how I can simplify the photo to not just my understanding, but just for it to stay with just by looking at it at the first time.
Okay.
So the idea is to make the photo as simple as possible and get the message easy. And then I will think of how to play with the colors. And then once I have the color, I think of a scale, because every picture I think of how what kind of depth I want to get based on the scale. And once that is clear, I just, I start sketch, and then the painting is done. But of course, it takes a lot of time and energy to process all these things and then start. And sometimes, you might figure everything out, but then once you start, it doesn't go as planned. And so there's also that room to play around with whatever or however the painting might go.
That's great. I appreciate your sharing that. And one more question just on this. Are there certain people or subjects that you find yourself repeatedly drawn to, or is it always someone new?
No, I think I have painted quite. There are a couple of subjects that I find myself painting them from time to time because the way they portray themselves, the character in which they are in, the way they dress, the style is always interesting.
Okay.
So it is something that I do more often, but then I always look out for new subjects and new characters because there's always something interesting somewhere happening.
Somewhere. Okay, great.
Or,
Thank you.
or people doing quite interesting stuff outside there.
Right. If we could have the next slide, please. As you noted a minute ago, fashion is always very important to you. But I think one of the things I want to touch on first is how one of the hallmarks, I would say, of your work, and which has drawn a lot of attention, is the way that you paint the faces and the bodies of your subjects, or the hands, the visible parts of the body, not with paintbrushes, but rather with your fingers. And there is this really kind of powerful contrast between the gesturally expressive physical bodies of your subjects and the more flat, sometimes monochromatic backgrounds, and then the patterning of the clothing. Can you talk about how you kind of came to this technique and what it is about it that you can achieve that makes you keep using that technique?
I mean, if I will say how I came about this technique, will be a very, very long story.
Okay.
But maybe I can share a little bit. So I used to be very, very comfortable painting with the brush. And I had a friend in Austria. They are called, it's a band called Sketches on Duality.
Mhm.
And they wanted to collaborate with me to do a video, on one of their music or songs. And so part of it is to come to the studio for me to make a painting which is titled Black God Hand in Action, which is a painting of Michelangelo, but then I have to paint it in my own way. And so part of it was to come to the studio for me to make the paintings, and then they will take footage of me making the painting, and that they will add to, the music video that they are doing. And so when it came, I wasn't really comfortable sharing my process of painting with the brush. So I decided to experiment on something for them to get a footage. And then once they go, I will make the painting, invite them to come, and then I will do finishing touches for them to for them to take, and then we're done. And so when they left, I did it. So I just took a paint. I did not even put on gloves. I did the sketch, and then I started just applying the color with my fingers. And then, when they left, I sat down and I was like, yo, this is cool. You know what I mean? It was flat because I didn't have any intention. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just me giving someone something, just, for them to use. And so when they left, I was like, this is really, really interesting. So I left it. I finished that project, left it, went back to my brush painting. And then there was a competition. It's called Walter Koszarski Kunst Prize. And they do only paper drawings, like paperworks. So my brush work takes, let's say, like a week or two to finish a painting. But with the finger painting, since I did it for the video, I knew it took me a shorter time, but it wasn't really well done. And so I quickly started thinking about how to make the paint more fluid so I can move around freely. On which surfaces can I actually play with? And so I went for different types of papers, and then I experimented a little bit, and then found one which is a bit slippery that I can really move easy on. And then I did a quick sketch, and then I did that finger painting, and then I actually applied with the competition with two finger painting and then one brush work, which I took my time to do, by the way. And then they chose the two painting that I did with my fingers, and then rejected the one I did with brush. I mean, I was happy to be selected for the competition, but then with time I realized I was more comfortable and happy with the way way I was painting with my fingers because I realized I was getting the exact thing that I wanted by struggling with the brush. So I wanted my painting to be as free as possible. It should, I mean, of course, one can realize the academic way of drawing in it, but in the painting, I do not want the painting to be anything academic. It has to be raw and free. And then I wanted that lucidity and a bit of abstraction, which I was struggling to get with the brush. And I was able to get with the fingers. And that's when I realized, I mean, I didn't need anyone to tell me that I have arrived. I
You
knew
had
that from,
found it.
yes, I have found it.
That's a great story, actually. And it's, I mean, I think as an art historian, people will, historians are always curious as to how artists got to a certain place. As a curator, working with contemporary artists, we have a real privilege to talk with artists in the studios or in situations like this, but to have that information is something I think historically when people are looking back will want to know. So thank you. This painting in particular, the patterning on this dress is really, really striking in my opinion. And so I would love to have you talk about fashion and pattern and how fashion plays into your work. You talked about it in terms of sometimes that's what draws you to your subjects, but I'd like to know, is it that you draw inspiration from their style or specifically what they're wearing when you photograph them, or do you take liberties? I'm really curious about how fashion and your portraiture kind of comes together.
I mean, yes, a lot of them I am drawn to their style, but I think also most of them I actually do style them myself. So if I did not get to be a tennis player and I would not be an artist, I probably would be a fashion designer because I do design the clothes for them sometimes.
Right.
When it comes to the textile, the clothes that they wear are not clothes that they were wearing when the pictures were taken. So everything is mine.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's mine. I'm claiming it.
You should.
Clothes are there for everyone to wear, and people. I mean, you might have money to buy clothes, but I think style is in one's DNA, and the way you dress adds up that courage and confidence and that authenticity that one has with them. Like your style is you, the way you dress is how you are. And so I think fashion really plays a big role in my work, because I feel like that's where for me that's how I can tell a person's character and personality.
That's great. And something that I'm interested in, just in terms of going back to process, is you've started using photo transfer process, and here it reads as mixed media. But can you talk about what photo transfer does? And because we talked about how you use your fingers and talk about brushes, but I'm really interested in process. So what does the photo transfer allow you to do that makes it something that you return to?
I like challenge. I like challenge, and I like it's not that I like to prove people wrong, but I mean, I do that often. And, I don't like to hear when someone tells me, oh, this is not going to work. And, it's not going to work. I'm like, just watch me. So I was in the studio trying to add another layer of material to my work, because people know my work to have, the exposed body has all the movement and all the intensity. And then you have the flat backgrounds or the flat colors just complementing the picture. That's what people know. So I was trying to add another layer to it, so I have something more. And so I was trying the transfer, because I've tried it before a very long time ago. I don't remember when, and it didn't work the way I wanted it. And I came back to it, and then I had someone in the studio who was like, I invited him to come back to the studio, and I was like, this is amazing. I was like, yeah, I told you, let the artists finish whatever they are doing, and and then say something. But So that's how I started with a transfer. It's because I wanted to add another layer. So what I did was go from shop to shop and look. So it's like a gift wrap paper,
Mm-hmm.
and I mostly get different ones during Christmas because in Europe Christmas is a big thing. So that's when they have a lot of different gift
Uh-huh.
wrap papers they will use for Christmas, and then I get most of them. And so I started with the gift wrap paper, and there's a liquid that helps you transfer that paper to another surface, but then there is also a timeline.
Ah.
But I think my impatience is what has led me to have this amazing way of transferring the gift wallpaper onto the canvas, because almost everything I would do cannot be repeated. It's like unique, because the time that they will tell me to wait until I take or rinse off the paper, I don't do it. I do it my own time. I do it as and when I feel like it. And so, everything that I do, like almost every transfer is an experiment at the first time.
I see a
Yeah.
theme here, like between the challenges and the experimentation. There's a
Yeah.
theme going on here about your practice. I love it. If we could see the next slide, please. So on a totally different note, last year, a triptych that you painted was launched into space and came back on the Blue Origin New Shepard rocket. How did that collaboration come about? How do you end up sending works into space?
Well, let's say events or collaborations like this happens through my galleries.
Mm-hmm.
This one happened through Marian Ibrahim Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
They reached out to her concerning this project, and then we talked about it. If it's something good to do, because I like to do things that helps with my career.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not everything that I do, but when and it's not everything that I know it's the right thing to do. So most of the times you talk and you brainstorm, and then if the points that the other person or the gallerist is saying, if it makes sense, then you kind of do it to see. So in this case, they reached out to her, we had a conversation, and we talked about it, why it is necessary to be the first African to launch a work into space. And so that's how it happened.
And how did you approach this differently than you would a painting? I won't say a normal, because obviously there's a lot of experimentation going on in your studio, but a painting that you would just normally make in the studio. Talk to me about how you picked your subjects, who these are, and how you approached it, because it's a very different medium than canvas or paper.
Well, one of the things that also got me to actually do the project is because of the material. I haven't worked on that surface before, and I haven't used the type of pigment or paint that they were gonna give me to use. So I was quite curious how the medium will even smell like or look like. And so I got a sample in Accra. It's a very limited color palette.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be very, very creative with how you create tones and or form the face. And so I did the first experiment in Accra, and from there, I was good to go. The paint smells a bit different. You have to like really cover your face because it's quite strong. And then we just moved to the site to do the original pieces. When I got there, I had images that I was gonna do, but then when I got there, everything shifted, because I had a friend of mine, Otis Kweku, who helped me with the project. So we went there, and I was like, there are these subjects that I want to do, but now that I'm here, it doesn't really make sense. I think what makes sense is that I paint my mom and I paint your mom, but then I'm not gonna paint you. I'm gonna paint myself, because I have to be the person who carries them to space. And we all laughed about it, but then it made sense. And so I painted my mom, his mom, and then I painted myself.
That's
Yeah.
great. What a great story. And I would
I mean,
love.
I mean, I think it's, it's important that we appreciate what our parents are doing for us, but most importantly, I mean, my mom is, yeah, it was only fair that I chose his mom because I've been interacting with his mom for a very long time, and I know the amount of work that they put in and the sacrifices that they do. Not that the dads don't do anything, they do, but moms are extra. So it only makes sense that I show that appreciation.
I love that. I'll be honest. If we could see the next slide, we can see how it was actually on the rocket. And when you said you went there, did you make these in Houston where it launched from and then saw them go into space?
Yes, I did them aside because the material that I painted on cannot be shipped anywhere.
Okay.
So it has to be on site. So we went to site together, myself, Otis, my student manager Nina, Maureen Ibrahim, Pierre, like a few selected, group.
Mhm.
And then we went to Texas. They gave us a site. We had a studio at the site. We did the paintings there. And then we all left. They assembled everything, and then we came back for the launching.
And what did the paintings look like when they came back? That's what I'm kind of curious about from a conservation perspective.
Well, when it landed, we had to go look for it, which we found all three of them.
Good.
And they were in amazing shape. Like it's like nothing happened to them.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I haven't seen them since it landed and took them for conservation or whatever they did. I'm actually curious to see it again. And I think there are a couple of things that they will do to put it out there for people to see. And so I actually want to see it again and to also see how people will look at it and react to it.
That's great. What an opportunity. We can have the next slide. So I understand you're currently working on an artist residency there, but it isn't actually the first initiative you've realized like this. In 2013, you and Sunandra Mosquita launched We Day, which was an organization that supported and empowered marginalized members of the Viennese arts community through a variety of initiatives, including networking and exhibitions and shared healing and shared studio spaces. Could you talk a bit about your work and your advocacy outside of the studio?
I mean, what I do outside is also part of what it's also part of the studio practice. I feel like, whenever I enter into a space or a place where I feel like something needs to be done and it's not done and it's not there, I hate to complain. I mean, of course, everyone is allowed to do or react to certain situations the way they want to, but I like to do something about it instead of talking about it. Hence the reason why we did with Sunanda, but then we had a grant that helped us actually do the We Did, which, like you said, gave space to Black and brown people to come together, talk about their experiences, because it's very needed. A very wide space like that, I think it's necessary that we have our own space where we can talk about our experiences without looking at who is listening or how they are taking it in. We needed to have that safe space, and that's what it was necessary. And then an artist residency in Ghana, it is an extension of what started in Austria, and I thought it's necessary to have something in Ghana because the art scene is growing. I mean, I know art in Ghana hasn't been that busy, and of course I don't really like to talk so much about how wide I open the doors, but I think people are saying that already, and it's great. But I think a lot of work has to be done to not just keep the door open, but to keep it interesting for people to actually come in and look at it. Because if you have the door wide open and there's nothing interesting happening, I don't think anything, and I mean, it's as good as closed because no one is going to come to look at it. And so the residency is a way to actually nurture talent and, give room for people to experiment. But also it is not just an artist residence where we are nurturing talent about visual art, but then we also have a writers and curators residence where, I think that it's necessary that, we have people that will push our work forward when, we are done visually making it. So part of the residence will also have writers and creators residence. And then when you look at the Ghana art scene, it is just men. I mean, I think it's necessary to have almost everyone included for the conversation, not just men talking about it. So part of the residence will also have a fellowship for women artists. It will be a grant or a competition for women to participate and, be able to do the work that they need to do because we need them to be part of the conversation.
That's amazing. And is there a timeline when you think this is going to be kicked off and we'll be able to read more about it? Or, I mean, I'm sure it takes forever to plan something like this.
Well, we've been planning this for like 3 years now. But finally, I think we are looking good. So this December, we are going to launch everything.
Great.
But Nina has, your details. I'm sure she's going to send you invitation if you have the time.
Sure.
And can come through, you come and see yourself and, but if not, you hear it, you see it, and people will talk about it. But
okay,
we are going to make something in December. We're going to launch something in December.
Great. I can't wait to see it either in person or to read about it. We've got a couple questions, but before I turn to the questions, I wanted to ask if there's anything you have coming up aside from launching your new program that you'd like to share with us. What do you have coming up?
Well, I talked about being a tennis player before art. So I'm also working on a couple of tournaments just to also because there are a lot of good tennis talent in Ghana and I want to activate those talents. So what I'm doing outside the art scene is making sure to elevate those areas and have, people like support good talent for them to actually play good talent, good tennis, and to reach the level that I once wanted to. Like it would be amazing to see Ghanaian players playing ATP tour tournament. Aside that, I think it's also back to the arts. I think it's great. It will be great to have institutions like I'm having my museum shows in the States and it's gonna travel elsewhere. But I think it will be also amazing to have an institution in Ghana that can also host and house my shows as well. But like I said before, those are the things that I would like to see. But if it's not happening, it's something that I'll have to do myself. So I'm also working on opening I will not say a small museum because I don't do anything small, but I'm also planning on building a museum that will host my work or house my work, show my work, and also show other international artists out, because I think it's necessary to kind of build a community or a space that people can also experience the art which is happening here and not just outside.
Great. And as you said, you do nothing small. I think that's become very clear throughout our whole conversation. So there's a couple of questions here and I'll just pick one of them, I think, because I know that we're running short on time. We have people asking about people or artists who you were inspired or influenced by. I think there's been a lot of discussion in some of the writing about some of the Viennese artists, Sheila or Klimt or someone like that. And I have someone here who is asking about Leon Golov's work, and the great painter here in the United States. But even if Golub wasn't someone who you were looking to, could you speak a bit about whose work inspired you?
Of course, the likes of Sheila, let's say the Viennese art scene did inspire because that's where I was and what I was exposed to. But then I was also exposed to a lot of Black American artists like Vince Marsha. I was looking at more contemporary artists like uh, Lynette Yadon Boache, a lot.
Mhm.
But I mean, Lucian Freud is one artist that I really, really like his work, and I feel like there's a lot of connection when I look at his work, but then there's not, people do not really connect my work to his work. But
Yeah,
when I see his work, that negative space, that way of, playing with the skin and that abstraction. I feel like those are the elements that I connect, but people don't see it, but I see it. So Lucian is one of the artists that I actually, yeah.
that is amazing. I will say, just to do a Hirshhorn brag here, the Hirshhorn hosted, I think, the first American retrospective of Lucian Freud many years ago, way before my time here. And we have two great paintings by him. One of Lee Bowery, it's a great painting. I'll send it to you after the show, but people can look at it online. It's Lee Bowery, and he's kind of laying on the floor with these rags. It's like a classic Lucian Freud painting. And then we have another nude. So I love that you shared that with us, because I would have never thought about the Lucian Freud connection. So having read a lot about you, I learned a lot today. So I want to thank you again, Amoako, for your time today. I have really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope that we get to meet in person someday.
Yes, and I've enjoyed talking to you as well.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank Lucy and Joy for their assistance in the interpretation and the captioning. Thank you. And to thank all of the people who joined us today. Just as a little note of what we have coming up, our next online Talking to Our Time program is on October 12th, when Hirshhorn Associate Curator Anne Reeve will be in conversation with artist Billy Zangewa, whose art is currently on view in our exhibition, Put It This Way, Revisions of the Hirshhorn Collection. So I hope everyone who has joined us today will tune in on October 12th and hopefully come by the museum if they can to learn about that show of women and non-binary artists who have works in our collection. And so, Amoako, thank you again. And I want to say goodbye. See you soon, I hope.
Thank you, and you have a wonderful time too.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye. And bye, everyone.